Okay, let's get started. What we're seeing in Haiti, based on this Al Jazeera reporting, it's a deeply troubling situation. We're really talking beyond just unrest here.
Yeah, absolutely. The country seems to be in a state of, well, rapid decline, frankly.
And the impact on people is just devastating.
That's right. Human Rights Watch uses the term free fall, and I think that really captures the speed, the severity of this escalating gang
This is
violence
a free fall. Wow.
and the profound insecurity people are facing, right now.
So for this deep dive, our plan is to try and understand what's going on based purely on this Al Jazeera article. It's dated April 17th, 2025.
Right? Focusing on the key drivers, the human cost, and, well, what's being tried to fix it.
Exactly. So let's start with that free fall idea from HRW. The article really stresses how much control these armed groups have, particularly in Port-au-Prince.
It's quite striking. HRW assesses that only, about 10% of the capital is actually under government control.
10%. That's almost nothing.
It really isn't. I mean, think about it. The capital city, largely outside state authority, it just shows the power vacuum.
And the impunity these gangs operate with.
Exactly. And Nathalie Catrino from HRW, she links this directly to the, quote, horrific abuses that Haitians are suffering.
Horrific abuses. And look, the article does give some important context. This isn't something that just happened overnight, right?
No, not at all. There's been years of violence from these powerful armed groups, often, tangled up with political and business figures fighting for influence.
So it sort of laid the groundwork for the instability we see now.
Yeah, if you step back, you see this longer pattern. Political fragility, weak institutions.
Yeah.
It's been a struggle. And unfortunately, these armed groups have often been part of that power struggle.
Fostering corruption, lack of accountability.
Exactly. But what really kicked things into high gear, as the article points out, was the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse back in July 2021.
That assassination really feels like a turning point in this narrative. What was it about the aftermath specifically that let the gangs sort of exploit that power vacuum so effectively?
Well, it's fascinating, really. You remove that central figure, and suddenly there's this scramble for control among groups that were already there, already armed.
Right.
It didn't just weaken the state's ability to, project any power. It probably fueled more competition, more turf wars between the gangs themselves.
Making things even more unstable.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And those attacks we saw in 2024 on prisons, government buildings in Port-au-Prince, that was a direct result of this intensified fight for power.
Those attacks must have just shattered any remaining sense of order.
Oh, absolutely.
And the article says this violence directly led to the prime minister resigning, the unelected one.
Mm-hmm. And the push to create this transitional presidential council.
Right. And at the same time, you had the UN-backed security mission, the MSS, led by Kenya, being deployed.
Yes, but, and this is crucial, the report states pretty clearly that the mission has, so far, quote, failed to take control back from the gangs.
Failed. Why, does it say?
It mentions underfunding and being ill-equipped, which, makes you wonder about what's really needed for these kinds of international interventions to actually work in places this complex, this volatile.
Yeah, it suggests it's maybe more complicated than just needing more money. Were there strategic issues, logistical problems, perhaps?
Could be. The report doesn't detail that specifically, but it implies the challenges run deep.
And the consequence, according to the article, of this lack of effective international help has been these self-defense groups popping up.
Vigilante groups, essentially.
Right. And you can understand the motive. People are desperate for safety, but the article says this has actually led to more deadly violence.
Like terrible cycle, isn't it? Retribution, more instability. When the state can't provide security, people look for their own ways.
But it just fragments things further, makes it even more dangerous.
Exactly. And we've seen this elsewhere. Without proper oversight, training, it just spirals into more lawlessness, more abuses.
And meanwhile, people are protesting against the Transitional Council because they're not seeing any improvement in security.
Deep dissatisfaction, yeah.
Yeah.
And then they declare another state of emergency in April.
But as that Haitian rights group pointed out, the National Human Rights Defense Network declaring emergencies without giving the police resources or a strategy, it's pointless.
Their criticism was quite sharp, wasn't it? Saying the police are just reacting no real direction while towns are falling to gangs. It paints a picture of a security force just completely overwhelmed.
It's a truly grim picture. And all of this leads directly to the humanitarian impact. The numbers in the report are just staggering.
The scale of suffering is yeah, it's hard to wrap your head around. The UN figures, just for the first 3 months of 2025, At least 1,518 people killed, 572 injured.
Just staggering numbers.
And that's from gang attacks, security operations, and these self-defense groups. But beyond the numbers, it's the individual stories.
Mm.
They're heartbreaking.
There's that quote from the aid worker.
Yeah, the one who spoke to HRW
Huh?
about people having, quote, no longer a safe place. Women losing loved ones, being raped, displaced, starving.
And asking, why is no one helping us? Why do Haitian lives not matter if we are human too?
That question, it just hangs there, doesn't it? Really brings the human tragedy right into focus.
It's incredibly powerful, just underscores the sheer desperation. It's hard to even imagine living with that level of fear day in, day out.
Mm,
And then the displacement figures, over 1 million Haitians forced out of their homes,
1 million people.
plus half the country, that's 5.5 million people facing acute food insecurity.
It's a complete breakdown. Basic needs just aren't being met for so many.
And the impact on children. Save the Children highlighted this.
Yes, that's particularly alarming. Over 40,000 children displaced just in those first 3 months of this year.
40,000 kids.
Chantal Sylvie Imbo, the director for Save the Children in Haiti, she described them as being, quote, trapped in a nightmare.
Trapped in a nightmare.
In these gang-controlled areas, constant risk of being recruited by gangs, and humanitarian aid struggling to even reach them. The long-term consequences for a generation growing up like this is hard to overstate.
And the knock-on effects of displacement, overcrowded shelters, disease, exploitation, sexual violence.
It's a horrific cycle. One crisis feeding another, hitting the most vulnerable the hardest.
So if we try to sort of pull the threads together from this Al Jazeera report, what we're seeing is this dangerous escalation of gang violence. Haiti's in a security vacuum, a free fall.
Right. The initial international efforts, well, they haven't worked yet. That's led to vigilante groups, which just adds to the bloodshed.
And underpinning all of it is this catastrophic humanitarian crisis. Widespread suffering, huge displacement, severe hunger.
And children facing just incredibly dire circumstances.
So this deep dive, just based on this one report from April 2025, paints a really stark, really concerning picture of the immense challenges Haiti is facing right now.
Absolutely. Which leads us to a final thought, maybe something for listeners to consider. Given everything we've just discussed from this report, what are the potential long-term implications? For Haiti, obviously, but also for the wider region if things keep going this way.
And maybe what kind of international support or engagement, different from what's been tried, might actually stand a chance of effectively tackling this incredibly complex, deep-rooted crisis.